Honorable member of this committee.
Thank you so much, Minister HOD.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and good morning to any members of the public. My name is David Mania, Minister of Education.
Morning, everybody. My name is Brent Walters, Head of Education.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Glenn Eli, CFO of Education.
And good morning, Sally Abrams, DDG Education Planning.
Good morning, Alan Meyer, DDG IDC.
Morning, Matthijs Cronje, Chief Director, People Management Practices.
Good morning, colleagues. Bertram Lauriston, Chief Director, Assessment and Examinations.
Good morning, colleagues. Ian De Baker, Chief Director, Business Intelligence Management.
Good morning, colleagues. Sigamani Naika, Chief Director, Inclusive Education.
Good morning, colleagues. Juan Benjamin, Chief Director, Curriculum Management.
Morning, everyone. Heather van Ster, Chief Director, Districts.
Good morning, everyone. Leslie McLean, Physical Resources.
Morning, Chair and members. Erna Veldman, Chief Director, Financial Management.
Morning, Chair. I'm Rian Eisen, Director Management Accounting.
Good morning, Chair. Neville Goliath, Acting Director, Inclusive Education.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Brenda Hammond, Director Communication.
Thank you so much. Minister HOD.
Great. Thank you, Chair. It obviously gives us great pleasure to have an opportunity to engage with the committee on our 2024-2025 main budget. We have an allocation, as members will know, of 30.85 billion. But members will also know that we have had to absorb significant budget cuts during the course of this financial year, and the department is under severe strain. But despite that, and I think this is important, we have managed to protect or partially protect some key programs, Back on Track, the Rapid School Build program, and our program for learners with special needs. We've also ensured that key programs that support schools have been topped up with own funding. And a good example of that would be our school feeding scheme, where the province is topping up the existing funding by, I think, about 200 million over the next 3 years. And also the learners with profound intellectual difficulties, where we will be topping up by about 220 million over the next 3 years. But despite that, the department is, of course, under very significant strain. And we are not the only department in this situation. All the provincial education departments across the country have a similar, are in a similar situation. But we are doing our best under these circumstances to raise additional funding to plug the gaps. And I really am delighted that we have been allocated an additional 2.5 billion rand provisionally. This is important, provisionally, through the National Treasury's budget facility for infrastructure. And that really is all credit to the infrastructure team in the department. But Chair, we certainly look forward to the engagement, and through you, I could hand to the head of department.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Minister, thank you very much. Minister, I think you covered it, but maybe just to reinforce and perhaps add 1 or 2 points from my side. So I think just to bring to the members' attention, I can't actually remember a time when we were cut in here. I have a feeling
program. I want to welcome it. I want to say it's a very good initiative, and it's definitely one that's helping. But my questions are about they're going to be around pages 195 and 196, the infrastructure development. I see that on page 195, there's a 17% drop in public ordinary schools infrastructure development that includes the national conditional grant of 2 billion rand. I'm concerned that, and focusing more, following on what member Christians has said, that repairs and maintenance is under threat, and I'm not sure if I'm correct or not, but a lot of schools are saying that there is no money for repairs and maintenance, and it's affecting, it can affect the safety of learners at schools. I know, as the committee is aware and as the officials are aware, I'm on the Alumni Association of Harold Cressy High School. And we've just built a 13.8 million rand wonderful multi-purpose center for the children. But the school is dilapidated. So that's our next project. So the maintenance is a major issue for me, because I see that on page 196, table 9.6.1, payments for capital assets, building and other fixed structures is there's an increase of 5.99%, but it is below CPI, and in effect that would be a bit of a cut, to be very honest. I just need some more clarity on repairs and maintenance for schools, and what is the directive and the vision for repairs and maintenance of schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Poole.
Morning, Chair. Chair, I don't think I have questions right now, but I want to make a comment. The Minister as well as the HOD was preferring to the cuts the department was going through. But if you read amongst this vote, you will see how innovative and new ideas department was coming up to see to it that this province getting the education they need. Yes, but of course there's challenges, and like my fellow colleagues said, in safety for that matter. But it's not the department at least that caused that safety risk, but is how we as public reps as well help the department to address these kind of things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Minister and HOD.
Okay, so we'll share the replies. If Mr. Meyer can just ready himself to speak a little bit on the question on school safety. And Mr. Abrams, if you can maybe just ready yourself to just speak on the questions about repairs and maintenance and how those numbers actually work. But maybe just to say, to start off with members say it's questions in relation to unplaced learners. So basically to say to you that at this point we have 10 unplaced learners, 6 in grade 1 and 4 in grade 8. Now, what I want to just say, Chairperson, is that this number will change daily and it will be a trickle. Children are moving in and out of the system all the time. So essentially, what we are saying as a department is we've placed the learners in the entry points. They've been placed. Because now we're still going to get, maybe next week you'll come with another learner, and, you know, obviously the department will look at that. But essentially we've placed the learners. I think that's really the major point to be made. The second point to be made is that there is a pop-up system, there is a schedule for it, and we make sure that the members get that, Chairperson, so that you obviously can look at various dates at various places as to where we are doing that to encourage admissions, early admissions for next year. System opened up, I think it was on Monday. I think that's the second thing. I think just in terms of on the question of school safety, Mr. Mayor will give a little bit more, but maybe just to say, Mr. Mayor will give the physical number. If he has the number, member say it on the number of schools that have resource officers. But what I do want to say, because member Kirsten's question also went into it, you know, members, just to say, Chairperson, that the schools reflect the pathologies of the society. And, you know, I think what we're trying to do is we always look at how many break-ins we have over the holidays. So it's sort of a measure. For example, in the last holiday, the number of break-ins went down, which is very significantly down, which is very good. But it is very important, I think, that we know that the system is large and it is uneven. We will never get to a point, I do believe, where all of that will be eliminated. And if there are specific cases, like you mentioned schools by name now, but if there are specific cases where, you know, it's come to your attention as members, and clearly you can raise it with us as the department, and we will look into that. So the question about the fences and the fences being removed, this is why it's very important, we believe, that you need to support the SGB processes, because the SGB processes need to be almost a reflection of the community acceptance of that school through those processes. And therefore, they help to actually bring the ownership of actually making sure that we protect the school as a resource. Now, clearly, there are people who are always going to be criminal elements, Chair, that, you know, subvert our processes. But we put a lot of effort into making sure that we have ownership not only of teachers and learners and parents, but also a wider community through that SGB process. That's what it gives. It actually allows you to actually say that this is something that should be valued, or something that should be protected, and really it should be almost a no-go zone for criminal activity. And just to reflect on my experience in other departments where we work, for example, with statues, I know it took a long time to actually build that confidence of community so that they don't actually touch a statue. And so work will always go on inside that area, Mr. Christians, where we try and give SGBs the ownership to say, look, the school is as yours as the community, and you represent that and help us to actually manage the school. But there are many techniques that some principals use that we've heard over time. Some principals, for example, that we've seen in some poorer communities, they've even invited the houses around them to come for tea on a Saturday and talk about what the school is doing. And so what that then means is they've got a couple of guardians now around that school. I know Alfred is in a difficult position because it's got 3 schools next to each other, so it's they don't have exactly almost a community right next to it. But maybe just to say to mention that, I think Minister will let the Minister talk about the pot, but certainly we are making big strides inside that area. You know that we've identified learners in the various grades. I think it's 4, 7, and 8, and 10 that we have identified for special attention, potentially through that program. And what I think the point I wish to make is that it's been so well received by the teacher and learner community. I mean, we've had no pushback. You know, sometimes when you introduce something new into a system, people say, oh no, this is, well, what is this? It's just an extra thing we must do. But what we see is that people are embracing the opportunity, and all the feedback we get, just the idea of even taking teachers even out of the classroom every 10th day and letting them share the practice of what did we do in the previous 2 weeks with their peers, and what are we going to do in the next 2 weeks. It's something actually quite game-changing in terms of education, because it's not a facility that's normal in a school setup. And, you know, if you compare to the department like health, for example, you'll find that they have those reflections all the time. They do operation, they have, you know, at the end of a talk, okay, what went right and what went wrong. That also allows us. It's just one of the innovation. But importantly, besides obviously strengthening the teacher's hands, it's also about giving learners a direct opportunity. And that's really what that program, I think, is about. So I think that maybe to on Member Frey's question, Mr. Abrams will answer that. But just to welcome Member Poole's reflection as a new member, to say that you can see that we've engaged in innovations. Thank you very much for that comment, because I think some of the things that we have done, rapid bot, the bot program and so on, they are actually innovations inside education and do add to this idea of us improving quality education for every learner. Thank you very much. Minister, don't know if there's anything you wish to add.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Thank you, Member Fry, for the question. So the considerations for budget allocation is in the context of all these competing needs, competing infrastructure needs. Let me be specific. I mean, the priority needs to expand the capacity to deal with overcrowding and to replace some of the facilities at the oldest school estate in the country from one budget means we need to get the balance right. And typically it's maintenance that comes under most pressure. So I acknowledge we need to improve the allocation. There is a DORA prescript that would ask us to spend 60% of our EIG grant, the Education Infrastructure Grant, on maintenance. In the year coming 24-25, we will up that and include emergency maintenance because of this backlog to deal with supporting schools to improve the facilities and improve safety and functionality. And we will allocate 41% of the budget in the coming year to maintenance. So 940 million is an indication of a need to bring maintenance back into focus, because on the one hand, it doesn't just help us to expand classrooms. We do have to ensure, as you said, with the example of Harold Cressy, that the rest of the estate and the facilities are actually in a functional and safe condition. So that allocation of 41% of the budget in the year coming is our first indication, of course, supported by a planning assumption that we might have capital budget emerging from an alternative source through the National Treasury BFI. That allows us within the current domestic financing to find more space for maintenance. So that would be a first signal that we're going to try and put that back on the table as a key priority in and amongst all the other challenges of dealing with overcrowding and classroom expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you for the questions, members. So from the SRO project at the moment, there are 21 schools that are funded by the City of Cape Town. And then there are the 24 that we're funding via the ABTs. We've taken the process of having further deployment in the ABT areas, where we're working with the Wellness Safety Committee in ensuring that we have additional security at those particular schools. But Member Conrad is correct. We are not a police force, or arranging and deploying officials on the ground. We require significant intervention in certain communities. We have a school, for example, where a community locks the gates of the school and refuses to open the gates for learners to enter. And so when we ask SAPS and we ask the other security agencies, they say to us, well, there's no case, we need to make a case, and then they have permission to cut the gates, and it's a whole long process to get learners back in the school. And at the same time, kids suffer because community has taken a particular position. So of course, the support we can get from community structures will help significantly in ensuring the safety at schools. In schools where we have significant buy-in from communities, the schools stand for many, many years without any damage to the infrastructure of the school by the immediate community. And those fences will stand there for years. But we find that even at schools where we put in new fence, and as Member Christians mentioned, the new fence at Elswood, that was completely replaced. And if we look at the size of that estate, it's massive. And so you can imagine the kind of costs involved in the replacement of that fence. And now again, that fence is down. But that corridor from Leonsdale, Elswood Primary, Elswood High School, that corridor next to the school is the gang shootout area. And so therefore people don't walk through that area, and therefore people can take their time to remove the fencing at leisure. And so those are the kind of community issues that cause the instability in the schoolyard. So it's not uncommon that when teachers are in class, as you have mentioned from your personal experience, to have outsiders walking into the school to disrupt the school program. So we can only put in as much measures as what we can. Now, let me qualify as well. When we say there's 21 schools that are funded by the city, we are also sometimes called to redeploy people immediately because of a particular situation that arises at the school. If you remember a few years ago, there was instability in the Lavendale area. We had to recall SROs from other areas into the Lavendale area so we could secure the 4 or 5 schools in the Lavendale area. And so that then takes away the SROs from another school. We move them to Lavendale, and then they're there for about 3, 4, 5 months, and the schools get used to them, and then they want them to stay there permanently. And it's really a cost we cannot, carry for such a protracted period. Our budget is around 57 million for safe schools. Of that, 23 million is for the SRO projects, and then about 33 million for safe schools budgets to schools, where we put in alarm systems. We put in target hardening measures like the motorized gates, the pedestrian gates with remotes, etc., to limit the kind of flow of people through school premises. Safe schools is allowed to do a small piece of a fence that is knocked down over a weekend, for example, or trampled down by community members, but it's only a small piece that they can replace. But we're fortunate in that infrastructure has stepped up and is now in the process of going through a process of replacing school fences, and that has been a great help. But again, I say, we put up the fence at Strand Secondary. We secured it. It looks stunningly beautiful. 2 weekends later, the first panel is removed. Then the next weekend, 5 panels are removed. And not long after that, we have a 30-meter piece that then needs to be replaced. And yes, they have funny Allen key, I think it's called, that they use to secure the fences. The guys come with, battery-powered tools to come and remove the panels, and they carry it away in the sight of other community members. And so that is the challenge we have. So they know that we respond quickly because we want to ensure the safety of the learners. We put another fence. And then they did exactly the same thing at Strand Secondary again. Mrs. McGlenn will tell you the issues we've had in replacing infrastructure at that particular school. We've got a new principal there now from the community. She was at the school, and suddenly the incidences have decreased. And the communities have got a bit of buy-in into the school, and the academics of the school has lifted. And I think, it's an eye-opener for us when the community takes that ownership of the school as well, via the governing body that's now working with the school management team, and that supports, the safety at the school. So we can put in alarms as regularly as what we do, and put in security gates at schools, and put on burglar bars on windows as much as we can. We've recently had private investors and funders coming to put down kitchens for NSNP. They are also having to put on all these security paraphernalia to ensure that the kitchen remains there. And it's a kitchen to feed learners from that specific community. It sometimes, really boggles the mind. If I use the Leonsdale example, we built a kitchen at the school. We put down the kitchen the same weekend it was burgled. Literally everything stolen out of the place. And so we go back and we replace because we must feed kids. And so that's the dilemma, remember, in which we find ourselves. But I think, what we saw at the end of last year, the number of incidences of vandalism did take a little bit of a downturn. And I don't want to say it too loudly because I may jinx myself, but we had less incidences of vandalism at school because we tried to spread the budget that we have for holiday security a little bit further so that we covered a few more schools. And so that has helped us to reduce, the kind of spend on it. But again, it's schools in high-risk areas only. So we're not looking at, let's say, for example, Oaklands High School. We're not looking at Oaklands because the area around Oaklands is relatively safer, but we still do find a burglary there as well. But in the area, like if I use an example, Mannenberg or Nova Park, we crowd in, because that is a hotspot. But then we still have the peripheral schools where we also have incidences of safety. But I want to reiterate what Member Conrad said. We are not a safety and security company or firm, but we have to do it to ensure that learners get access to a quality classroom every Monday and not come to a classroom that's been vandalized over a weekend. And so we work very closely. Mrs. van Ster, the Chief Director for Districts, is the chairperson of the subcommittee for priority committee. for school safety, and we have representatives from the city as well as SAPS, law enforcement, etc., who talk about these issues that we pick up in schools. And I must say, in many of the instances where we call the city, they respond very quickly. When we call SAPS, they respond very quickly to come and assist, with the safety arrangements at the school. So we're very appreciative of the relationship we have with the City of Cape Town, as well as with the South African Police Services in quieting down situations fairly often. But again, I will ask, as Member Conrad has also asked, we need to have public officials also spreading more of the message into communities that schools is the ownership and the property of a community. The advantage for the learners within that community sits within schools. We provide that possibility for them to transcend, the situation in which they find themselves. As long as we are able to have a facility that on a Monday morning is presentable for learners to come into and not being broken down over time. Thank you, Chair.
A question was asked about back on track from Member Fernand Christians. I mean, Chair, there's no better way to end a tough week than to spend an hour or two on a Saturday morning at a school implementing the Back on Track program. The program is really inspiring. I mean, I was with the Premier at Rocklands Primary School on Saturday, had a lot of time to engage with the principal, Mr. Keith Skierpers, with the tutors, with the learners. And I think it was a really inspiring visit. And most importantly for me, the principal was able to demonstrate that the program was having impact at learner level and that maths and language had improved, and he was able to demonstrate that. I do think it is important for the committee to understand how we are dealing with the Back on Track program in an environment of significant fiscal pressure. And I'll ask through the SG if Mr. Juan Benjamin could say more about this. But essentially, I mean, we have had to reduce the budget, but because we've become more efficient, we are able to maintain, as I understand it, the scale of the program. Of course, the challenge, Mr. Christians, over the medium term would be to find ways to scale up the program. That's the medium term challenge in an environment of severe fiscal constraints. But I wonder if Mr. Benjamin could provide through you some more detail.
Thanks, MEC. Thanks, Member Christians, for that question. Yes, I'm not going to repeat the fiscal pressure that's been brought onto the program, but the program remains the only learning recovery program in the country that is funded and that is targeting in excess of 20,000 learners. Despite the pressures on the budget and the cut that we had to absorb, we have been able to maintain the efficiencies because the program is decentralized to school level, and so the school principal receives an allocation to drive the program, and oversight rests at district level, which heightens accountability right up into the province as well as at ministerial level. It was exactly a year ago that the challenge was put out by the MSC that we address this issue, which is a worldwide collapse of public schooling as a consequence of the pandemic and learning outcomes, to be bold, brave, and go big on this issue. And so I'm very hesitant to say that we've expanded the program, but we have, despite the pressure. And you might think, well, in that case, we don't need to do anything about the budget. But we are doubling the numbers at grade 4, and we have doubled the numbers at grade 7. And so we're looking to target closer to 30,000 learners this year. And we are in constant conversation with the budget office of this department to see how best we manage that process and continue to improve the efficiencies. One of the things that has helped, for example, is in our first year, we've allocated power stations to schools so that even when there's load shedding, they are able to maintain the program. And because we're maintaining the emphasis in the same schools, we don't have to replenish them in that way. So there's an efficiency there around the provision of tablets and power stations that we don't have to repeat as an expense this year, and that helps us control the levels of expenditure. The other thing that schools have done is they have taken ownership of the program, and so we have X allocation for feeding, for example, and the school has been able to expand that by taking feeding in-house and getting parents and community involved in preparing food, and therefore kind of stretching the budget on that issue. And we now find more and more schools, despite us targeting X number of learners, they are able to add and sometimes triple the number of learners they're servicing as a consequence of the program. So the program has also brought back agency into the schooling system, both at teacher level and at learner level. The one aspect that we still need to address, and we could not because of budget constraint, is to involve the parent inside the program. And that's something we still wish to do. And therefore the pressure on budget remains, because the triangle between teacher, learner and parent we want to cement. And we're also looking to build out the involvement of social development and community safety and the DOH, so that when we have learners at our schools on a Saturday, if there are psychosocial issues or issues of primary need attached to our learners, because the entire program is vested in vulnerable communities, that we're able to bring those sister agencies on board and get the parent to the school in a non-threatening environment and kind of assist with upskilling of the parent around reading and mathematics support to the learner, but also deal with the other psychosocial issues that affect them in that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe before I hand back to you, Mr. Mayor just wants to talk a little bit more about the pop-ups and just give you information, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Members, just to say that we will have pop-ups at 120 sites across the province. So it's slightly up from last year's number. We will be present in 17 malls this year, compared to the 5 or 6 that we were in the previous time. The remainder will be libraries and schools, so that they are close to communities. And all of this has been advertised on our website as well as in the social media. We even have some information on buses as well, to say that parents must go onto the system and register themselves, their learners on there. So our budget for last year was 457,000 for the pop-ups and for the marketing around the admissions process. This year the budget is 1.9 million that's been set aside for parents for registrations closer to them. And so hence the increase in the number of sites where we will have a presence in terms of that. It's about 9 pages, Chairperson, of information of where these sites are. If with your permission, we can send it to the Secretariat to share with all the members so they have it for their constituencies. If that is in order with the members, we can do that to Wasima. Just the last.
I just want to say,
sorry.
we will welcome the extra information, but I also expect the members must bookmark the education website, the WCED website, please, because all of the information you're telling me now is also on the respective websites. It's quite easy to also download, but I'm going to ask the PO just to forward everything as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just also to note a very significant point on the website, you will notice that when people go into the website, at the URL at the top, it will say /data free, which means that once a parent is on the system, their transactions on the system is free of their data. We carry the cost of that data. So it's you will see it on the website when parents go on there, just to make it accessible for every parent to be able to do so. I know that there was a slight challenge with a few parents with cell phones logging onto the system, but once there was a small reset we had to do on our side, and so now it takes up a good shape on the cell phone for parents to be able to do as well. Chairperson, there was a last question from Member Christians regarding the homeschooling. Yes, that is still available, but of course there we would have a district official visiting the applicant's home to check whether there is space. The parent will actually be doing, teaching of the child, whether the parent has the qualifications to do so. There's also paragraphs in the Schools Act which parents would need to adhere to, and of course where the parent would have to monitor, the progress of their child as well. After the visit, the district normally provides written comment and recommendations, which is then forwarded to our officers, where we will then make a decision as to whether it's been approved and a certificate is issued for the homeschooling of a particular learner. So if the member has any further request for information, we welcome to contact our officers, and we will respond in that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Follow up, Chair.
Yes, no.
Just a follow-up, and I don't want to belabor the point, but just to get back to the school safety with Alsut, just it's not, we don't go, I don't go there and just look at the complaints. We also sit down with the community to try to work out solutions, so I just wanted to say, I asked them, do you have a functional school governing body? Are people ready for the elections and those type of things? We've asked, do you have functional neighborhood watches, to help? But the one thing that one of the people, staff said is when you phone Safe Schools, you must give your personal number. And they are scared of being victimized because, the information goes out quickly because the gangs control it. The gangs I tell you, the gangs, I think, is on another level there. But and I've asked them, do they have a speed dial for the police? They said, no, the police works, but somehow the information gets out to the gangs, and that then pulls communities out of assisting the school. So I don't know how to resolve that because who do you trust when you give information? And it happens at other schools as well, where the gangs are controlling. They're controlling because just to give you that community is that the people are dependent on drugs and tuck. So they steal the school fence because that is the way they, they get their money. So it's an ongoing problem, and it's it's a societal problem, as you said. And we are trying to get involved with the communities, even with the church leaders, to say, if you have congregants in your church, say, listen. So we're doing much more. And I know I'm just highlighting that because this is happening at other schools. So I know it's a societal problem, like I said, but as public relations, we try our best. That is what I'm trying to say. We're doing our best, and we just don't play the blame game. It's not that. I'm just thinking, when people are reporting or people are, how do we protect those people, especially in your domain, not police, in your domain, and people feel that they are victimized and so on. But I tell you, while I was there, they were engaging with some sponsor to cut down the trees, but save the trees is there for the children, but now they must cut down the trees because the gangster sits under the trees. They come and they lay under the trees. And while I was there, just to ask, there was learners that was under the trees while the school is in session. I don't, and the teachers cannot do anything about it because I questioned them about their pass rate of matrics, it dropped down to 46%, I think. And it was in the 80s, because I questioned those type of things. That is what we're passionate about, And they said, listen, I can't do anything. There's the learners laying under the trees, and gangs are sitting with them. So the teachers, their lives are in danger. I just wanted to say, how do we and how do we protect those people that face phone safe schools, and now they must identify themselves and they are scared because they must also get to home and so on. So I just wanted to throw that out. So we understand the problems and we're coming with solutions, and I'm involved in trying to help, but I don't know what to say to you. That's just a follow-up, even it's a follow-up thing in
I just wanted to say, in my constituency, there's a principal at the primary school, and I think I've said the story before. And when he was asked by the previous Minister of Education, when she went to go do oversight, how do you keep the children in schools? Because you actually have a great throughput rate from the primary school to the high school, and the kids don't leave. And the principal's answer was he went to go knock on everyone's door to ask the parents to send the children to school. And the reason that it get vandalized is because he said to the parents, but this is your school, why are you vandalizing it? And there was a director at Stellenbosch University, his name is Pieter Kloppers. And I remember there was some safety thing that happened in the one road. And Pieter Kloppers said to me, Deirdre, the worst thing we can do as a university is to tell students not to go walk in that road anymore. Because actually what we're doing is we're making it more unsafe. What we actually should be doing is we should now tell everyone we are all going to go walk in that road because no one is going to make this road unsafe for us. And it's a very difficult problem because the schools, when we go do oversight at them, the schools where there are problems and the schools where there are not problems, they could be next to one another. And the one school is doing ridiculously brilliant, and the other school is not doing brilliantly. And the difference is the parents are involved in the school. The SGB is functioning. They have great leadership in principals and teachers. And sometimes I think we forget in society that there's responsibilities and duties also as a parent and as community members. My neighbor allows me to tell her children when they are doing something wrong because she wants to make sure that when her children grow up, they don't continue doing the same wrong things. And sometimes we don't do that anymore. We don't tell children, actually, you cannot throw rocks at someone else. Actually, you should not be smoking in the park. And sometimes I think perhaps we need parenting camps and community camps, the same way universities have welcoming weeks. At a university, you have a welcoming week. You go, you learn the campus, you learn where the IT is, you learn your teacher's name, your lecturer's name, you learn everything in terms of logistics and the culture of the organization. And sometimes I think that is what we need in society is community and parenting camps. But I think that is a conversation for another day.
Thank you for the input, Mr. Christians and Chairperson. I think it's important what you say to give community ownership. I mean, I just want to reflect on the statue on the previous department I was in. They take 5 years to put it up. And when I asked why do you take 5 years, because clearly I know nothing about statues, why do you take 5 years to put it up? They said, we're taking the time to create ownership. So by the time we put that thing up, everybody knows what this thing is about and they're not actually going to touch it. So I just wanted to make that point. It's a point you're making. The principal actually took the time to speak with the community, creating ownership. And maybe that's something members can take out to their communities. We must create ownership and support that principle inside that school. But I wanted to just talk about protected disclosure, Chairperson. We do have a very sophisticated system of protected disclosure, deal with it all the time, where people from schools will say things and say they want to be protected, protected whistleblower. Then we have a full system that kicks in with our forensic people and so on. So if there are instances like that, there is a way in which people can actually whistleblow and tell us they actually want to be protected. And normally they do that through my office or through the communication office to be able to actually do that. And then we protect them. I think we'll go into investigation. We will protect them. So if there are those instances, you can just maybe bring it to attention, ask that person if they're comfortable. We do have lots of protected whistleblowers inside the system.
Members? Member 5?
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, and I got 4, but I'll ask 3. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the answers and for the comments. My comment would be that I applaud you and I envy you for working under extremely difficult, not only budget and fiscal constraints, but societal constraints. And please pass on to every teacher the fact that we appreciate what they do in their schools. Just a follow-up question on the Rapid School Build program. Have you used the demographics and the information that has been collated by Census 2021 to understand where the best areas are to build the Rapid School, to implement the Rapid School Build program, and to maximize the effect of it? And then the second question is extramural activities, and it fills into my third question. I don't know if I can't recall whether I asked this question the last time or I sketched the situation, but there was a bandstand music competition at the waterfront at around about September last year. And all the schools lots of schools were represented. The previous Model C schools were cut, like they were cut above everybody else. But Belhar High came there with a smaller band, and they did very well. But you could see the effect of the lack of resources at that school for extramural activities in terms of music. The talent was unmatched, but the equipment and the resources that are underpinning that the talent is unfortunately lacking in Belhar versus a school like Burfleet or versus a school like Settlers High School. So what is the budget constraints? What are we doing in terms of extramural activities and specifically music? Coupled onto that on page 187, table 9.2.1, transfer and subsidies to non-profit institutions is increasing by 7.55% to 2.1 billion rand. If you can just get some more information on what non-profit organizations and how is that addressing the gap between the richer schools or the more resource heavy schools versus the resort light schools. And my final question, in the words of member Baka, for my last question, is 9.2.1. Again, the compensation of employees that increases by 3.7% to 18.8 billion rand. Is that inclusive of the wage bill agreement? Because it, and then of course I would understand there are other factors that are that influence that 3.77%, like natural attrition and so on. Does that include the wage bill and whatever? So we're not adding any posts for teachers at the present because of the fiscal constraint. Thank you very much.
Judy?
If I could maybe just ask Mr. Eli if he could just tackle the last two questions, which is about the transfers to non-profit organizations, suspected SUPs, what Mr. Eli will I think, talk about that. And then just in terms of the increase in the 3.7% on the wage bill agreement, Mr. Eli, if you can perhaps just address those two questions. But maybe just to, and then Mr. Abrams, you obviously talk about the Rapid Build School program. If you can, just in terms of the selection of the areas and how we actually get to that, the process to get to that. Then just on the extramural activities, I mean, clearly, Mr. Fry, you do understand we have to service the basic mandate, right? So when you start talking extramural activities, that means they're outside of curriculum, they're outside of stuff. And generally, we do not have a budget that just says this is the extramural activities. We have to fund our, just say cut a cloth according to our size in terms of the curriculum offerings. Now, one of the subjects there is life orientation. And so we channel some of the things for what you would consider to be extramural activities through that. But remember now, Mr. Mayo also talked about the decision we've taken to try and get 3 sports back in every school. Just 3 sports. We want every school to do 3 sports. Mr. Mayo, Mr. Mayo, maybe just talk about that. Small budget that we're putting to that. But when you start talking about the thing like extramural, a band that goes to wherever, we do not have a budget for that to be able to sponsor such a band. And so what we will do there is encourage them, we promote it if we can, but we don't have a budget to basically set aside to say we can actually sponsor people to go to a private competition that's happening inside the waterfront. I mean, the fact that the Balawa school did very well is excellent because clearly it's uplifting for that community. But I think I have said this many times before, the schools reflect the disparities in the society. And that's unfortunately the truth. What we're trying to do is we have to support the system in a fair way and try and make sure we lift whoever we can and whatever communities we can with as much as we can. And so I think you see that in our budget. Essentially, we've got to straddle this entire system, make sense of it, and make sense of it for all learners. And so our core focus as an education department has been on curriculum. It has been on reading, writing, and calculating. If you listen to the some of the things we have been saying, that's our core. Clearly, as an educator, trained as an educator, I understand that that is necessary but not sufficient. But you actually have to provide other things. The budget doesn't allow us to provide everything that we want to provide for our learners, but where we can, we will. And essentially, I think that's the dilemma we are in. Demand for services rising, number of learners rising, population growth, budget unable to keep up with that demand. It's lagging that demand. And so we have to cut across, according to the size, because you will be the first committee to be calling me here if I sponsored a band, but that results in no classroom for a learner. you'll be the first committee to call me to order. So you can't do that. So I think that's the challenge. And what we're looking for always is the sweet spot between that. What is the sweet spot between this? In other words, we will never kill such initiative. We will try and support it. Maybe we can skew the music program to it, and we look for things like that to be able to actually try and see if there's ways in which we can support. The other test, Chair, for us is a test of fairness, because when we do something, we also ask ourselves, if 100 other schools come and ask us to do this, are we able to come up with a set of criteria that defends, or are we able to fund those 100 schools? And that's also a dilemma, because we've got 1,543, I think, schools, if the number is correct, it changes, 1,543. And so when we tackle things outside of specifically curriculum, we start to look at it in that way. We have to, because we have to defend that in some way. If I think of the previous department I was involved in, for example, if you take the sports stuff, they channel their things just through the sport organizations, because they also need a way to distinguish between making sense of what we do. So that's my answer to that one. But if I can ask the others, if they can maybe just add to the other questions. Mr. Evan, who's going to go first? Mr. Ila? You can go first, Mr. Ila.
Yeah. Just Chairperson, just in terms of the question around the MPIs or non-profit institutions. So obviously, as a department, we use the classification as given through my National Treasury. So in our case, non-profit institutions refers to our actual our schools. This is normally the standards we transfer to schools in some cases, and in grade R, it's also to the same institutions as well. So that's what the transfer payments, and also where we have Section 21 schools, where they manage their own budgets, we transfer payments to them as well in terms of South African Schools Act. So that's what the kind of nomenclature is here about, trying to describe that as well, in terms of non-profit institutions as well. But as I said, the bulk of that is normally standard payments that we make to schools. Then in terms of the question around the COE, compensation for employees, let's just say that obviously we receive allocation from National Treasury or Provincial Treasury by National Treasury, and that is based on particular assumptions. And in this particular case, they have asked us when we budget to include the CPI as an indicator to us in the allocation letter to us, which also includes pay progression, housing allowance, and medical aid. So some of the benefits are already included in that figure, and that's the assumption we're working on. Obviously, depending on the wage agreements, and that's the part of the challenge we have in this country this year with the in-year cuts, where there's a wage agreement in place. However, the funding didn't flow, or the sufficient funding didn't flow to finance that, and then the department had to reprioritize its own funding to fund that deficit. And I think Mike today has alluded to at the earlier stage in terms of the opening remarks about the deficits the department is carrying. So that deficit that we're carrying over the MTF at the moment, it's about 3 billion rand that the department is carrying. Chairperson, just in terms of our process as well, this department goes through a consultation process in terms of what we call a basket post, or the number of educators we can afford. That process unfolds every year with consultations with the union. So we can't necessarily say here we've made provision for that, because we have to see how things pan out in terms of the wage agreement, and then also in terms of the normal attrition rate within the education fraternity, because what we've seen is that there's more younger people coming into the system as the people at the higher notches, who's been in the long system for a long time, as they retire as well. So Chairperson, that's a process we go through in between July and August, where we make that announcement for the following year. Obviously, also with engagement with Provincial Treasury around it as well, trying to get some assurance from them in terms of surety as well. So we are working with the budget we have at the moment, and currently there's a number of posts we have currently in the system to be funding at the moment, and we will maintain that in the next year based on the particular assumptions that we've built into this particular process. So I'm sure it's coming through clearly now in terms of what I'm trying to explain, but that's the process we follow in terms of dealing with the compensation. It's a big budget, It's the biggest budget in the province as far as compensation is concerned. We employ over 46,000 people, so which includes educators and public service. And as you know, Chairperson, that currently, in terms of a DPSA circular, all posts are frozen for head office and for districts as well. That's there's a particular process we have to go through to obtain approval for putting off posts, but that's where we are currently in the state as a whole. There's a general freeze of posts as well. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. To the question around does the department use the census 2022 data or 2021? Yes, we do. There's a nuance. I mean, we use the mid-year population estimates for our ongoing planning. Infrastructure is a multi-year planning process, of course, and so we track at the quantum, at the system level, the demand, and we track the changes in that demand as it relates to, for example, learners seeking access to the system in the Western Cape from other provinces, but also the movement between urban and rural. And then specifically within the census context, we look at the disaggregated age cohort data. So it's relevant for us to think about whether it's 5 to 9-year-olds, 10 to 12-year-olds, or 15 to 12 to 15-year-olds that's moving to the Western Cape or that needs access. That allows us at a system level to identify demand. There was a nuance, though. The question was, do we use it to determine where we build the schools? The spatial view is, of course, influenced by the historical undersupply of schools. So we have service pressures like overcrowding and lack of capacity because we don't have enough high schools, particularly in certain areas. So we do consider the total quantum, but in terms of our prioritization around where the next school goes, it obviously considers structural deficits. We have structural deficits on the eastern and northern side of the city of Cape Town, and indeed in some parts of the Western Cape. But if it becomes confusing around why we might choose to target the West Coast, which has a relatively lower quantum than, say, in Metro East in the city of Cape Town, it's because it's in relation to supply. So we look at the total number, but it's in relation to the supply of schools and classrooms that ultimately influences the prioritization for the rapid school build. We're happy to share more detail around the key criteria. And I should add on the supply side, obviously the availability of land that also determines where the school goes as a matter of priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, we will be starting a pilot at around about 80 Quintile 1 schools for Sports Wednesday. So learners will dismiss earlier on a Wednesday, and they will then engage in constructive sporting activities at their schools. So what we were doing is we will be providing the schools with a small amount of funding to buy soccer jerseys and soccer posts and those kind of things, and netball posts, etc., because we're driving 3 main codes of sport: football, rugby, and netball as the 3 big ones within the schools at present. As you know, the first term is athletics. Everybody's busy with athletics, and I must say we've been having quite a number with a higher participation in athletics over this past term so far. So the pilot project is in 80 schools, Quintile 1 schools. Will provide small seed funding for the school to purchase equipment related to the main codes. The idea is that the schools will then start playing in a circuit competition, in a district kind of competition, and pull it through. We know that at some of the more established schools, sports is a regular occurrence. In lots of our schools in the poorer communities, schools are not playing sport. And so the idea is really to bring that back into as part of the curriculum, because we all know when we were at school, there was that athlete who in the first quarter was the main person at the school, received acknowledgement for his or her ability, but it provided an impetus for that person to succeed within the school as well. And so this is what our intention is to provide learners with more opportunities to succeed. And sport in itself brings discipline with it. And so we've seen it with our drill classes that we run at schools, particularly in the Mitchells Plain area. They are packed with learners coming to drilling classes to come and do the marching bands, etc., because they find a home within it. and there's an activity after school. And so the school gets protected because there's eyes on the school. And so this is why we are driving very hard. And yes, I'm still trying to find some more budget for it. But for now, we're looking at the 80 schools with small seed capital to start them off. But the idea is to later then expand it to more schools, to have this afternoon on a Wednesday to participate in sport. We are also very pleased to also say that we will be supporting the primary schools, the Western Cape primary schools team that will be traveling to Limpopo. Later, the WCD will be making an allocation of funding for the team to travel to Limpopo. It's always a struggle for parents, particularly in our quintile 1, 2, and 3 schools, that parents struggle to gather the money for learners to go. We are pleased that we will be contributing to that as a department, as part of our understanding about increasing participation in sport. And of course, it's concomitant kind of benefits from participation in sports we're hoping to derive. A learner that feels, part of something, of being part of a team, part of a school, and of course, hopefully spilling over into academic improvement, of that learner, but also others within the school. So we're just trying a different strategy around the sport. But I think, we are confident. We've seen within the drilling, for example, the kids love it. They're there every day for practicing. They buy the tackies, they use whitewash to clean it and get it ready for competition day, etc. But there's a lot of pride that it brings with it. And so we're hoping that with the focus on netball, soccer, and rugby in schools, that, we'll get a stronger push around that, Chippers. But of course, in the arts, we do know, and I must also just acknowledge the Elsie's River Band. You should actually watch them one day, Member Fry. They're also quite phenomenal in how they perform as well. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If the members want, they can also use some of their commemorative funding to maybe organize a sports event, because I think, if I'm correct, 20% of it you can use to buy the soccer balls and the stuff like that. But just an idea for members who still have commemorative funding left. Colleagues, I'm going to ask that we just take a break for 20 minutes, and we will then start at 10:45 again with the next round of questions. Thank you. one, and I'm informed that we are online on YouTube. Okay. Member Christians at Fry.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just one or two things. I actually wanted to make a few comments, but let me just take the questions first. The question on, and we understand the independent schools. I mean, I understand that it's, I think it's 188. We understand the independent schools and the money. It doesn't go, the money is not for the rich schools, it's for those who are struggling. Just my question is, does this contribute to maybe, reduction of classes in public schools? Does it help with that? Because, you're giving money to a school for the independent schools. I'm just asking, is it a win? Is it a win for the department? Because does it, of course, give quality education as well, because you have a say there, because you're giving funding. You're not giving funding to the rich schools. I understand that. I just wanted to hear from you. Does it help with reducing class numbers? That partnership, because the budget has increased steadily over the period of time. I just want to know that. And then maybe the other thing that I think the chairperson also, we had that meeting yesterday, and the big thing is the early childhood development, grade R. If that is compulsory, that is going to be a massive, massive problem, because the department doesn't have the money if it's compulsory. And I don't know if National's got the money to give you guys for if grade R becomes compulsory, and the pressure being put on. So it's just a question, because I think we all want grade R to be compulsory for children to be ready. But financially, it might be a massive problem going forward. Just two things. The one thing is, I also just want to know, and this is just something off the cuff, something that if you look at Silverstream Primary School, some of the children there are Afrikaans, and they don't have any teaching in Afrikaans, only English. Silverstream Primary School. If you speak to their children, they cannot. But Silverstream Primary School, they only teach in English, not Afrikaans. And if you speak to those children, they can't even speak English. They only speak Afrikaans. So that maybe is. I just wanted to throw that in, because it's. I interact with that children a lot. Just maybe the last thing, Chair, there's more questions, but this is the last thing. I just wanted to respond to what Mr. Mayor was saying about the sporting on Wednesday. The biggest problem we have is that parents don't come to these events, and children want to, they want to show off. And so the plan is, how do we get parent involvement? Even if you have this little clubs, the parents just don't come. And if you go to the schools that are excelling in schools, your independent schools, your Saxon, parents are there. I used to drive from the one school to the other school to be at my children's events, the one in Claremont, one in Rondebosch. But I used to drive up and down to make sure that I'm there, because it does something to that child. So just, Mr. Mayor, just to ask, how are you, because it's a great pilot plan, but how are we going to get the parents to support our children? Because that, I think, is a major problem. I'll park it there now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fry.
Thank you, Chair. If the Chair will indulge me, I just have to ask a question regarding the non-profit institutions. Firstly, I want to say thank you to Mr. Walters for saying it's reading, writing, and calculating, and not the 3 R's, as the national minister had noted. I want to quote to you from the speeches that I've made in the SOPA debate and then in the NCOP, was that I asked, what is the right thing to do? And the right thing to do for any government is to serve its citizens and to serve them well. And then in the NCOP, I noted that The Gini coefficient of the nation is 0.676. In the Western Cape, it's 0.9597 in 2019, and in 2022, it is 0.592. The reason why I raise these questions is it is more of an ideological discussion, and I understand the nuances that come with it, but I think the ideological discussion has to inform a budget as to how we're going to use our resources. Now, I'm coming to my question. My question would be: I understand that there's post-frozen at national, at district level, and at the level. Is there any way that you can inform the non-profit institutions as to how they spend the money? Because we have a major gap between rich and poor in this province, and we really do. I commend you for using innovative ways in addressing that issue. But more needs to be done. Unfortunately, we really need to look at more innovative ways in how we handle the finances from an ideological point of view. I'm not sure if that is in the realms of this discussion, but I'll leave it there. Thank you, Jay.
I just want to check, is your question how NGOs can better spend their money within the education space?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. HOD?
Thank you very much for the questions. Let me just deal with the one off the bat, just on the log for Silverstein Primary School. We'll just look into that. If Mr. Meyer and Ms. Van Steer specifically can just look into the log question, the language of learning and teaching. If the demand is there for Afrikaans, they have English. It's an operational thing. They will look at it, but generally, that question, it's also about what language the parents have chosen there with the school. But when we see a situation like this, it may be an opportunity even to have dual medium if it warrants it. But again, it's not a straight line, sir, because it depends on the numbers and what the demands are. Sometimes you also have a situation where parents of one language demand that the children actually be taught in the other language. That could also be. So Ms. Van Steer, who's the Chief Director District, she and a team that will go into it. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I think just as far as the budget is concerned, there was a question about independent schools, and you wanted to know, is this a win for the department? Definitely is a win for the department, because for us, we're looking at it just per capita what we actually spend. There's the transfer payment we give to the school, but remember, there's a lot of hidden costs. The textbooks, the desks, the buildings, the land. Now, when you have a small subsidy that goes to an independent setting, the per unit cost from our point of view is much lower. So obviously, it's a win for us. In terms of, because what it does is it actually takes pressure off the system, the public system. So if we got the growing demand like we have, with lots of numbers of people coming in, then clearly that's why we support it. Because in the end, it takes pressure off us in the public system. So maybe I hope that answers the question. So then on the question of grade R, so I want to allow myself with a comment to say, look, obviously we know from an educational point of view, the earlier you start with learning, the better for any child. The only problem is on the affordability, because we at the end are guardians of the purse strings. Us as the department, we have to make sure that the resources are suitably deployed given the policy priorities. Now, the problem with this decision, if you make grade R compulsory, the costing of the gap that we still have to cover will blow us out of the water. That is the dilemma. And so maybe if that does happen, some agency in this country will have to go seek external funding. Maybe we have to borrow. I don't know what the answer is. But I can just say for our coverage right now, I think we still have 25% still to go. If we were to roughly think about that as a code of 100,000, there's 25,000 extra learners you must make space for. If you cost that out, it's in the billions to be able to make that space. And it's not only about having the money. Then you've got to think about, to the schools, the primary schools that they are, do they have the land and buildings to facilitate. And that becomes an issue. And why I'm raising that is because, it's a policy option. It may, even if it does become a policy option, you may have to have almost a limitation or a window in which it can be implemented over time, because I cannot see South Africa implementing that just at the drop of a hat. So in other words, we decide today that's going to be the decision. Tomorrow we come and we say, yes, this will happen. And I think from the department's point of view, this has been the reason that we've been calling for a pragmatic approach to this discussion, to say, can we actually afford it? Because clearly, if we could afford it, chairperson would have classes of 20 in a class. If we could afford it, if I was an educationist, if I had all the money in the world, that's what I'd make a rule like that. No class above 20. But we can't afford it. So we're sitting where we are, and it's the same discussion with this thing. So I hope that clears up, I think, our position from a administrative point of view. Silver Stream I've dealt with. Sport on a Wednesday. Okay, so maybe I just want to comment on the issue of lack of parental involvement. So let me ally myself with your comments. What we know from education is when the child is surrounded by not only the parents, but a number of other things that community brings, that when you actually have the child lifting. That's also where weaker learners don't fall through the cracks. When you have the parental involvement, because even that weaker learner, the parent is involved, the parent is sitting next to us, the parent is taking our hand, this is happening. But one of the complaints that we go through when we meet with schools is that you talk to schools about the parental meetings, the SGB meetings, and so the parents don't turn up. They don't turn up. Even when you call with term results, and you're going to discuss your term result with the parent now. Child's got a term result, you meet parent by parent. I think all of us are parents, we know we've been through that. Whether, you go into the school, you meet the math teacher normally. I was a math teacher, the line is long outside my door. Lots of children didn't make it. So the point is that it's a disaffection, it's a problem in our society. But that's not something we can solve as the education department. We provide the facility, we encourage the parents meetings, we almost try and force the situation. But when we meet schools and speak with them, we talk about this issue, about many other things, and they say there's a lack of parental involvement. So that may mean that yourselves as public representatives and other NGOs outside of say, these walls here, they need to take that up in a discussion in community to get parents to actually be involved. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to take the question on sport on a Wednesday. There was a question that was asked by, you say they don't turn up. I guess the question was more around, you're going to have these events, but our parents going to support it. And your point that you were making, sometimes there's destabilization because you don't have the control. But that's all about community building, Chairperson. So Mr. Mayor doesn't have to answer that. That's fine. And then just on the last question that was asked by Mr. Frey, non-profit institutions, how they spend their money. They wanted to know whether we can have a more efficient way. I think that was your question.
Public Works. Here's life.
I think you were. I think you were asking more about how can we direct that they spend their money in a more efficient way. I mean, obviously, we can say that, but again, remember, Frey, this is a scalability issue. We're talking here about small amounts at the margins. And when we talk about the system, to be able to change the system, at this point, the amount we're putting into non-profits is minuscule. That's minuscule into those non-profits, as Mr. Eli has indicated. So just to say how they spend their money, yes, obviously you can sign an agreement with them, but many of these associations we do work with, we see them as partners, and they can add value and make our product better. That's really. But again, part of their dilemma is always scale. As soon as you start saying, they say they can do it for 100 people. They say, can you do it for 1,000 people? Maybe yes. No, but when you talk our numbers, can you do it for 100,000 people? And it becomes very difficult. But I mean, obviously, we keep the doors open, and the conversations open as a department. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Follow-up questions? New questions?
Yeah.
Just Chair, yeah. No, that's maybe a new one. This one, I've asked this one before, and I'm just thinking a bit again about. I don't know what what previous answer on this question was, but let me just ask it. When we also speak about, the learners being placed, um, the question that I had previously, and I want to ask again, is I know that, you know, I always talk about learners must be accommodated that lives in close proximity of the school. Now, I've been to Kraaifontein, I've been to Mitchells Plain, I've been to Paarl, and it seems to be the same problem that we are having here. That I don't know, and I think I was answered on this one, but so learners in Mitchells Plain don't get play that stays in the area don't get place in the school. The same, can't remember the school in Paarl now that they mentioned that I was there. I can't remember the name. And then Kraaifontein also. It seems to me, and it's really not a race issue, but the parents put it out there that children from other areas gets into the school. Drive in Mitchells Plain, go to Mitchells Plain, you'll see how many black learners is in those schools, and then some of our colored learners is not in school. It's a concern. And when I went to, I think it's Scottsville, it was the same area, when same problem. When I went to Paarl, it's the same problem that our learners doesn't get placed in that school. And now, there's a lot of other reasons, but it's so obvious that learners in Mitchells Plain and Kraaifontein and Paarl, like I said, I can go to other areas, can go to Kenilworth here, Voortrek High School, um, learn the learners in close proximity. I don't know what's happening, why they don't get placed, but learners from other areas get placed. And I've met with Rebuild Mitchells Plain. I met with all those bodies there, and that was the major. And I'm helping them now to make sure that our learners apply on time and so on. But if the department can just give me an answer on that, it's a problem not at one school. All over the province, when you go, you'll see this is the problem that we are facing. And I think I've asked this question to the Premier as well. And the Premier, I think when I asked the Premier, he said, I mustn't be, I think he said, I don't know, but let me just not say what he said. But Minister, what I'm doing, I'm referring to quality education, quality education. If our learner cannot go to the school that's in close proximity, parents need to pay, children falls out. And I know the Western Cape is proud to say, we always talk about learner retention because it's the best in the country. But it's so difficult, for the parents to pay that amount of money because the child is not placed. And I mean, you can give me statistics because I will get the statistics out in the community to tell you exactly the problematic, and it's happening all over. So if you can just answer that for me, like I said, I just gave the 3 samples that I've went out and to see if it's in the province. I can do more, just to talk about that. Let me just get to the other page here that I wanted to ask a question here. Chair, I'll just give somebody else opportunity to ask a question while I'm looking for mine. Thank you.
No problem. Any other question? Member Poole?
Chair, yes, I don't have a question, but I'm a very frustrated person. I become a frustrated person if I don't know something from where I'm coming from. If my learner member just can give me the name of their school so that I can know, because I'm from Paarl.
No problem. I'm sure we'll all be able to assist one another. I have some questions, but I just want to quickly on a procedural point say I think I consider myself a reasonable person, and there are things that irritate me in life. I do not. I do not. I do not like starting late. I do not like technical problems. And I like hearing my own thoughts. So I just want to apologize for all of the different delays and technicalities. I know we are back online. We got back online after the break, and I have messaged the speaker because there are certain things that must just happen in life. When we start a meeting at 9, we start a meeting at 9, and everyone was here on time. And I want to just apologize for all the different delays in this regard and interruptions. Minister and HOD.
Okay, so I'm going to just try and answer the question that was asked by member Christians. I just want to start off. We have to provide context, right? So the first context is that we're a growing system and we're under pressure. I think I just have to bring that across powerfully to you member Christians and to the members here and the chairperson. What that does is it actually creates pressure, and we obviously have to make decisions. Now, we have a free choice system. So a province like Gauteng have a zonal system. A province is divided into zones. You can only apply to schools in that zone. We have a free choice system. Admissions policies in the hands of SGBs. So they would decide whether, for example, if a learner lives within 2 kilometers, is this a criteria or not. So what that essentially means is that gives us limitations. Just those three things that I mentioned: growing demand, we have free choice system, and the fact that the policy choices actually sit in the SGB's hands. If you take those three things and combine them, then they sometimes can result in some of the things you were speaking about, where learners live right near school and they don't actually be accepted by that school. Generally, with a free choice system, there'd be other criteria that the school would use to be able to, make sure that learners do get a place. I can show you other areas, though, where 100% of the learners are from the area. I can take you into the province and show you that. Where there are schools where 100% of the learners are children who come from the area of that school. So I think this is the issue. As parents, because I am a parent, and most of us in this room, I think we are parents, if not all, always seeking a better opportunity for our children. Every parent is doing that. Every single parent. And in a free choice system, they're free to choose anyway. So that's essentially what happens. People have a free choice system. They apply that free choice system. And so obviously the schools with better reputations, they fill up their places faster and they have higher numbers of people applying. And that's what happens inside the system. So if you have a policy of free choice, and that's the constraint that comes with it. Sometimes you're going to find the children that just fall out of the bus in relation to this. But our commitment is to provide a place for the child. Our commitment as a department, and we've done that consistently, chairperson, over years. There was a question asked, I remember saying about admissions, but where we with admissions. And I mentioned this number of 6 and 4. It's 10, which is in 100,000 code. There's 200,000 code, 1 and 8, roughly. It's nothing. And that number is actually it's a negligible number because we will find place for those learners. We will find place for those learners. And anybody else who, people who walk into the entry points, we will find place. But again, it's free choice. Free choice is the thing that actually drives that issue. Okay, I think I'll find place. Okay.
I've sent someone to the Speaker's office to go request assistance in this regard. I have some questions. Okay. In terms of the rapid school funding and infrastructure funding, I just want to check how many schools will be built or classrooms will be built with the infrastructure money, the budget. Then in terms of energy and solar, that was on page 195. Yes, 195, with the money for energy for schools. How many schools will be benefiting? How many schools will be benefiting from that energy funding? Then on page 187, there's after schools mod center feeding scheme. So I'm not sure now, is that topping up the nutrition money? Is that what you were talking about, topping up the nutrition money, or is the topping up of the nutrition money in a different section of the budget? And then on page 178, relating the decreases in the learners with profound intellectual disability grant, as well as the social sector incentive grant for provinces that is decreasing. Did national say why it's decreasing? Is there criteria where how they're decreasing funds or taking funding away? I'm trying to understand why we are decreasing by 11% on the learners with profound intellectual disabilities and almost 30% on the EPWP grant, and how that's going to affect the respective programs. Thank you.
And just ask Mr. Abrams if you can deal with the first two questions on classrooms, infrastructure money, and energy. Sorry. And then Mr. Mayor, you can just deal with the issues of the feeding scheme, mod center, the mod center program. Mr. Mayor, Dr. Naika, between Dr. Naika and Mr. Mayor, you can just deal with that question, please. And then the third question was about the reduction in grants, which I will deal with the chairperson. So, chairperson, just to say to you that the budget cuts affected every public entity in South Africa, including the DB. So they obviously have a budget of their own that is kept on their own, and then they have money which they give to provinces in conditional grants, of which we involved in 7 of them, of which this is one of it. But they cut each conditional grant because they were given a number that they, just like we were given a number that we needed to reach by our treasury, the National Treasury gave them a number and said, you have to actually get within this number. So the only place where they have the big money to be able to cut is, or a portion of it is in these conditional grants. And so in a way, it's almost like they transfer that risk onto us now, actually. Because based on the conditional grant, we obviously have made promises, raised expectations in communities, schools. We're going to do X, Y, Z. So then we had to actually pull in our belt afterwards and say, actually, we said we're going to do this. So all those grants, every single grant was cut. So our treasury also cut us for equitable share, the PES money, but the grants were also all cut, each of them. And I think that probably if you ask that question across the departments in the Western Cape government, you'll find a similar thing for those who actually found conditional grants, because there was a figure that National Treasury had said, okay, you have to come up with this figure, just like we were asked to come up with a figure. But if I can, Chairperson, if I can, with your permission, ask my colleagues to perhaps respond to the other questions. Sally, do you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Perhaps I'll lead on from the context that the SG has just shaped around the budget cuts. When we had, to your question, Chair, about how many schools and how many classrooms, when we had submitted an application to the National Treasury, it was for funding of 35 schools as part of a larger portfolio of 55 schools over the next 4 years. Two things had happened. In the preliminary or the provisional allocation, 2.5 billion rand and not 3.5 billion rand was allocated over the MTEF. And we had budget cuts in the EIG and the ES side as well. So we are currently replanning on scope of the program. We understand with the 2.5 billion, we need to set some expectations around how many schools that covers. The answer I would offer at this stage, given that we are still in planning and we are consulting this internally and with stakeholders, Chair, I think you can appreciate that, we constantly look at land availability with some of the dynamics of losing land as we speak as well. We are targeting at this stage minimums, and those minimums are 375 classrooms a year and 8 schools a year. But these are not commitments. These are in our planning framework based on the availability of land and monies collectively. For the record,
Sorry.
yeah.
I'm going to take my discretion to just suspend the meeting for 10 minutes. I need to go make a phone call to the speaker quickly. We'll be back at 11:28. time ago, even though we do budget at the same time every year. But we are going to continue now with the question and answer session on the budget vote. Apologies for the previous interruption.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I was in the process of explaining. Let me answer the short version is that we are targeting 375 classrooms a year. With the context, as I've given earlier, that we're balancing that with other infrastructure needs. So 375, that in the context of the number of schools that I quoted, a minimum of 8 per year. So that 24, of course, delivers classrooms as well. So it's in total capacity is 375 classrooms a year, but we will deliver 8 full new schools as a target. And that's obviously not a commitment at this stage. We busy working with a budget finalization. And of course, the more pertinent issue of how we are able to accelerate the rapid school builds is through securing land and ensuring the partnerships and the supply chain are in place. So that hopefully is a quantification of output, which your question drives for, Chair. Similarly, on the energy side, the 144 million that we will put to energy is both for solar and to drive some efficiency with replacing lights. It's about 50 to 60 schools that will benefit in this coming year from those types of interventions, and we'll get the balance right between helping schools save money by changing and making the electricity consumption more efficient, but also making them more resilient with solar panel installations. That number of 50 is the one that we've got in our planning framework at the moment per year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the MOD is a separate program from the NSNP, and the budget for that is 65 million. That came over from BCAS to WCED. So we run that program separately. It's an after school program.
Additional to the nutrition money that we are topping up for the NSNP. Perfect. Thank you so much. Colleagues, any new questions or follow-ups? Member side, and I just also want to welcome Member Harris. Member Harris is one of our newer members as well, with Member Poole as well. So thank you and welcome to the committee. I was saying in the break, we are usually much more efficient than we are today. So thank you for your patience as well. Member Syed.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is on page 197. Dealing with the outcomes as per the strategic plan. So it illustrates there that there's an improvement in learner performance in grade 3, systemic assessment and in language and mathematics. Now, while we note the reported 4% increase in maths and language pass rate for grade 3, as well as the less than 2% increase in maths and language for grade 6 and 9, our concern has been that these results do not always match the kind of investment that the province is making on the back on track intervention. So, and it's not always the case, but they are. So how much, we just wanted to get a sense, how much will be spent specifically on back on track in this financial year, and what are the targets for maths and language pass rates for grade 3, 6 and 9? Then secondly, the matric pass rate. I just wanted to get a sense on that in terms of what is the, okay, I don't want to go into the causes, we'll go into that and at some other stage I think we have, but what will be the cost for such an intervention, you know, for an intervention to actually address the matric performance, particularly with regards to maths and physics? Thank you.
Any other members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me just say first on the bot interventions, how much will it cost? The budget for 2024-25 is 292 million rand. That's the budget. The question was then moved to what do the targets be for grade 3, 6 and 9? But I think maybe just to preface my remarks, because it's also linked to the matric maths and science performance that you also asked about. And maybe just to preface my remarks, to just say that education is not a straight line. You know, I like to tell the story of Lionel Messi. who became the world's greatest footballer. But when he was a junior, Barcelona had to back him between the age of 10 and 14. He had something wrong with his legs, but they still stuck with him. And, you know, after his muscle development and so on came right at the age of 14, he then only started to show his talent on the age 15, 16 and higher. But he was in the junior system already from age 8 or 9. I said, this guy is talent, but we're not quite sure. Education is very much like that story, because everybody has a wake-up call, or let's just say developmental spurt at different stages. So what we've done, I think, just in terms of our own feeling about this is, remember, in a policy environment, we took a decision 3 years ago. We're going to invest in foundation phase. We took that decision. So what we're seeing then in a systemic assessment in terms of the results is 4% actually increase. And it's better than grade 6 and it's better than grade 9. Maybe there are other reasons, but we do believe that it's because we actually placed the focus, pull all the people who are teaching that into a room, start to speak with them. It's not only about the money. The money is one aspect, but it's just about that intention and say, okay, potentially now children can't read, write, and calculate by age 10 with a level that's adequate. Enough of them. Because there are children who can, but not enough. There's always never going to be enough. What can we do about it? So we really went into that, and I think we're seeing some of the results specifically for that. I don't have at my fingertips the targets for grade 6 and 9. But what I can say too is that we're looking for continuous improvement inside that. I mean, obviously, you always want to do better than you did the year before. Because what that shows you as a system is over time, if you put in the investments, you actually will actually get a return. Because that's what education is about. It's like putting the investments in over a long period of time, and you do get a return. Now, to the question about the matric maths, and I think you said physics. It was just the maths and physics. I just do want to point out to you that in those two subjects, we're actually amongst the best in the country. My colleagues can correct me, but I think we did the best in those two subjects. I'm not sure if I'm correct, Mr. Benjamin. We did the best in the country for those two subjects. However, the issue then becomes, how can we actually increase the numbers who do well? It's again that same argument about grade 3. And so we have a math, science and technology grant that, you know, we do get, that essentially has gone into that. And then if you take the back on track program, specifically on the mathematics, back on track programs at the various grades is trying to build a system at all levels for mathematics and language, because all the other subjects, they are predicated on proficiency in those two things, language and mathematics. Everything else comes second to that in terms of building on that. So when you start talking about physics, for example, you will not get a student who is a top physics student unless their maths is also very good, because essentially that subject is built on top of mathematics. And the same with, let's take a content subject like history. I'm just making that one up now. You will not get a learner who's very good at history unless you find the language result is also very good, because it's predicated on the same thing. And so we have taken a decision as a team that while we have focal points that we've mentioned, obviously there's a lot of focus on the matric exit, but we've taken a decision in our team. We have to strengthen the system at all levels. So if you look at that BOT program, so in other words, extraordinarily beyond what we normally would do, which is support every grade. We're supporting every grade in a normal way. We've got the teachers there, we've got the textbooks and all the other things that people have spoken about. But we look at those critical grades. For example, from grade 3 to 4, it's a language transition grade where the language of learning and teaching shifts. So you've got to provide the extra support to actually make learners, make sure that they, do well. If you take the 7 and 8 grade, the transition between 7 and 8 is huge for learners, because essentially they're coming from primary school in a certain context to a high school in a different context. And so then some things get lost there. Part of what happens with a young person when they go from grade 7 to grade 8 is about their teenage year development, where they start to express their identity as independent of their parents, independent of their teachers, independent of the community. They decide, this is who I am. The way in which they're actually coming out. And what we then deal with is having to manage that. So the transition from 7 to 8 becomes very important. And that's why we also decided to focus on that grade. And then, of course, grade 10 is the first year of the FET phase, which is the exit matric exam is based on 10, 11, 12, and the exit exam. So, I mean, I know I gave a long answer, Mr. Said, but I want to just assure you and the members here that a lot of thought by experts outside of us has gone into thinking about where should our interventions actually be to be able to improve the whole system. And we know we've taken the correct decision to look at the bottom end because we need to focus there. If you take the like people who, I'm not an academic, but if you look at the academic papers on countries that do well higher up in the system, the bottom end of the system is actually very solid. So hence the reason now we also got ECD placed with us. There's an opportunity there to also strengthen the system through ECD. And you get that right, you get your grade, your foundation phase correct. Now you can start to actually build the system as we go along. Sorry for that long answer, Chairperson, but that's really the background story. Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Eli, just pointing out to me, Chairperson, that on page 109 of our AP annual performance plan, we do have the targets for all for grade 3, 6, and 9. For 24, 20, 25, 26, but it was 24, 25. Okay, for 24, 25, I'll just read it for the record. Percentage of learners in grade 3 attaining acceptable outcomes in language, so 42.5% target. For acceptable outcomes in grade 3 for maths, it's 51.6%. And for reading for meaning, 47.8%, for example, in grade 3, and then we've got it for all the others as well. Thank you, Chair.
Also on page 55, it's a little bit nicer in the table on page 55. And the target's on 109.
Thank you.
Okay. Members? If none, then that brings us to the end of the deliberations on the vote. I just want to say, while we are going to have education meetings still this quarter based on legislation and statutory matters, this will likely be our last substantive education meeting for this term from 2019 to 2024. And perhaps we might see each other again and perhaps we might not. But I just want to say thank you so much for the hard work that you do. This book doesn't just write itself. You know, if you're managing over 1,540 schools, it's not easy. Thousands and thousands of learners. There are people in this department's employ that wake up every single day and they are passionate about ensuring that every child gets a bright future. And I was chatting to an old lecturer, my old auditing lecturer a few days ago, and he told me he was watching some of my videos on my social media, and then I got scared because he was a very strict auditing professor, and then he was like, "No, I would have told you by now if you're doing nonsense. You must invite your lecturers to your meetings." And he shouted at me at that. And I want to say that sometimes we forget there are people out there that are still watching to make sure that we still have a bright future. And just that phone call is one of those reminders of the importance of education and how much teachers care about the kids in their class. I'm someone who's a daughter of a teacher as well, so I get my fair share of lecturing at home. And for every single person, minister, HOD, I know a few people have retired and gone to sit on wonderful beaches with cocktails, and we've said goodbye to them. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Chair, just from my perspective, this will be, as you've said, our final substantive meeting. And I really do, on behalf of the department, want to thank you for your stewardship of this committee over the past 5 years. But I also want to thank the members. We don't always agree, and the members have, held our feet to the fire over the past 5 years. But I think there's one thing that we all have in common, and that is that we deeply care about education, and we're all committed to the vision of achieving quality education in our province. That is what we have in common. And I really do want to thank yourself and thank the members for your diligence, for the hard questions, but also for your commitment and care about improving education in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Chairperson, let me add to the Minister's comments and thank the members for holding us accountable, because that's really your oversight committee need to make sure that what we say on paper and what we say in words, we actually execute in the actual real world. That when you go there, you actually do see the fence up, you do see the school built, you do see learning and teaching happening. I do want to thank this committee for the spirit of the conversation in a short period that I have been a chairperson, because I haven't been in this committee since 2019. I only got here in 2021. So for the 3 years that I've been here, I do want to thank the committee. Education is a weighty matter, but it's all in all of our interests, I think, in South Africa, that education succeeds. And I do want to thank the committee for providing the level of oversight that keeps us on our toes to make sure that what we actually promised on the paper actually gets delivered, and that you see that delivery. It becomes very important to hold us accountable as the administration with our executive member here, to hold us accountable, and we do understand that. Thank you also for bringing matters to our attention. Specifically, all of you at one point or another have actually brought matters to my attention. Thank you very much for that, because it's a little bit of a dipstick to see, okay, we say things are like this, but here's something that, hasn't not quite in line. I do want to thank you for that, and whatever happens, chairperson. That's just the nature of things. I just want to, on behalf of the department, to say thank you very much for, I think also let me just say that the tenor and quality of the conversation inside the committee, because I think we always felt that the questions were always relevant and that they're really about our business, and anything that can improve education, we certainly welcome it. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. Thanks for your leadership. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to confirm, I didn't see any members of the public online or in the meeting. Okay. Oh, sorry, Member Syed.
Chair, no, thank you very much. And I know it's not normally when the senior political leadership has spoken in the form of the MEC, we don't normally come in afterwards. But let me also just thank, firstly, the colleagues of the committee. I think we've, despite even our party political differences, for the main, we've had the same objective. And we've been very robust, but we've also been able to agree on quite a few common issues in the sector and drive accountability. So thank you, colleagues, as well, and especially to you, Chair. You've led us really, really well. You've also, when we sometimes, veer a little bit off course, you are there to also say, no, look, and we may not always agree with you in that regard, but in the final analysis, it was good. It allows us to be focused. So thank you very much. And then let me thank the department and the minister. Really, I mean, I think we've developed a relationship where, yes, we are here to hold the department accountable for the sake of service delivery, for the sake of improving education. But also we've been able to, at times, I mean, many of the things that we've been able to achieve also, we'll feel comfortable to pick up the call, to speak to each other, to say, look, let's see, how do we sort this out at this particular school? How do we resolve this? And you've been responsive in that regard. I think we want to thank you for that. And we look forward to the work in the next administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. With that, you are excused, and the committee is just going to continue with its administrative business. Thank you so much. Oh, just a reminder, there is lunch upstairs on floor 6 in the dining room. Please do join us. Okay, colleagues, I just want to check. Colleagues, I just want to check if there's any resolutions before we get to our draft report. Okay, colleagues, we are now at the deliberations of the vote. If I could ask what your view is on the vote, and then I will read out the draft committee report in accordance. Member Fry?
Thank you, Chair. I move that we support the vote.
Okay, thank you, Member Fry.
Second
Member
the
Paul?
proposal.
Thank you. Member Syed?
Chair, the ANC would like to register its minority view that we don't support the vote.
Okay, and just for the record, I also support the vote. Okay, so the report will then read, Report of the Standing Committee on Education on Vote 5, Education in the Schedule to Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 2024, dated 14 March 2024 as follows. The Standing Committee on Education, having deliberated on the subject of Vote 5, Education in the Schedule to Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 2024, refer to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote. In accordance with Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed its minority view to not support the vote. Do I have a mover for the report? Member Fry?
Chairperson, I also move the report.
Thank you. Member Christian seconds the report. The report is so adopted. Okay. Colleagues, just a reminder again, just because today is our last more substantive meeting, we still have some legislative matters on the calendar, so please just make sure that you have those dates in your program. And to ensure that if you need transport or accommodation for the respective days or meetings, that you just please liaise in advance with Ms. Hassan Musa. And I just want to, before I thank the committee, I just want to say to Ms. Hassan Musa, firstly, I was elected chair for education, I think also in 2021. And coming over to the social sector was quite a perspective jump almost from the economic cluster, a different mindset change and how to do things and the way things are done in the different departments and in the committees and so on. And I would not have been able to do it without you. I don't think this committee is able to do its work without you. The amount of time and effort you put into your work is truly remarkable. Your work with integrity and dedication, and you also put us on our place, which is good. It's right. That is what one is supposed to do. The procedural advice that we receive is always of high quality. And even when we are not sure, even when you are not sure, you will say, Chair, I will find out. And you do. And you'll come back to us. And it's just, I mean, we gave feedback to the committee yesterday about we are already over 5,000 submissions. And the process, even alone with the statutory matters that we go through, and which Ms. Hassan Musa, Ms. Mary Ann, Mr. Ben Daza, them, Nomfundo sometimes, the Siraj and Candice, you know, the amount of time and effort you guys put in to make sure that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament Education Committee keeps on running is just absolutely remarkable. I want to say thank you. To the committee members, I love each one of you all in different manners. You give me a hard time, and we have lots of laughter and joy as well. People don't always see all of the oversights we do because many of them are unannounced. So sometimes people might only see the report on an oversight we've done after we've been there. Sometimes people attend our briefings and our meetings, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes people are engaged in the subject matter before us, and sometimes they aren't. And it's sometimes difficult being a member and not knowing whether people actually care about the respective topic. But then you end up at a public hearing where there's over 1,000 people that pitch up for that particular public hearing, and you realize people do care and they do see the work that is being done. And I just want to say thank you for showing up for the residents and constituents in your constituency, for showing up for the schools and the parents and the teachers and the learners who approach you to ask for assistance, for bringing the issues to the committee. I mean, one of the things that we've been able to achieve as a committee is putting in a feedback register to make sure that as we send through the different complaints and queries to the department, and as they are resolved, the committee actually gets feedback on whether a particular matter has been resolved, so that those matters don't fall through the cracks. And yeah, so just thank you so much for all of the work. Yeah. I'm not sure if the interpreters can just must thank yourselves as well, interpreting. And for the sign language official, I think it's a little bit weird thanking yourself while interpreting for us, but please do so. We really appreciate it. Member Fry?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you once again to Ms. Hassan Musa. I think from our side, you've led us expertly well in terms of procedure. I'm reminded of a Thursday afternoon when we've had our fill of everybody after being a week on the road. Not many people will tell us where to get off very politely, but you have, and we want to say thank you for that. You've kept us honest, and you've kept us focused on what we have to do. So what we are called to do. We're called to serve the citizens of this province. So thank you very much. And then to the chair, thank you, Member Bartman, for your expert leadership of this committee. I know that education is not necessarily a scholastic strong point of yours. You haven't studied education. You weren't sure, but your only relationship with education was your mother as being as being a teacher. But you've led us expertly well. You've led us in what we're called to do as legislators and as people, and most importantly, you showed us how to care for our people. There were rough times, there were difficult times, there were sometimes when they were, but you've shown that you care not only about us as individuals and us as members, but the wider education community. We couldn't have done this without you, and I wouldn't have a better chair for education than you. So thank you very much.
Colleagues, with that, the meeting is adjourned.